Thanks for joining us today. My name is Keith Harris. I'm your host for today's webcast from Milestone Systems. At Milestone, we believe video technology should do more than record what happens. It should help you understand what activity is occurring. Milestone is a global leader in data-driven video technology. We support industries from manufacturing and airports to law enforcement, retail, and traffic management. Our solutions include XProtect Video Management Software, BriefCam Video Analytics, and Arcules Video Surveillance as a Service. Our portfolio of products help organizations learn from the past, understand what's happening right now, and make smarter decisions in the future. XProtect VMS is our open platform video management software. It brings together cameras, sensors, and analytics into one centralized system. So you can see, manage, store, and analyze all your video in one place. Because it's built on an open platform, you can integrate the hardware and third-party technologies that you need. A new tool we're introducing for our VMS is XProtect Video Summarization. This tool is a generative AI plugin for XProtect that helps operators search summaries based on video content rather than timestamps. Reviewing, summarizing, and gaining insight into that data is a huge challenge. That's where vision language models come into the picture. Today, we'll talk about what VLMs are, how they work, and why it matters. Let's get started. We have three great speakers lined up for you today. Roland Harwood works at the intersection of smart cities, ethical AI, and climate innovation. He's the community lead at Milestone, and he's building a global network of startups and cities advancing generative AI and ethical insights from video data through our project Hafnia. Ben Cahill is with us. He's been working with AI and data-driven business development for nearly a decade, with a focus on creating value in compliant and ethical digital applications. For the past 5 years, Ben has focused on smart city development. As a part of the Hafnia team at Milestone, Ben manages end customer adoption of new technologies such as the Milestone VLM. Alex Pazos is with us today as well. He has over 18 years of experience in computer vision, safety, and the security IT space. His focus is on camera streaming platforms, video analytics, and optimizing edge-to-cloud infrastructure workloads. Today, he's the head of local government in the Americas for NVIDIA. I appreciate each of you being here as our panelists today.
Thanks, Keith. Great to be with you. Looking forward to the session.
Pleasure to be here, Keith. Thank you for the invitation.
Keith, thank you so much for the invitation. Pleasure to be here and looking forward to this engaging session.
All right, let's jump into our first topic. We're going to be talking about the video data journey. Roland, I think this is your area of expertise. What can you tell us about the video data journey and how it affects the customer?
So you may not be aware that Milestone has over 500,000 installations of its video management software, XProtect, globally. And in the world of AI, access to good quality data really is essential. So we wanted to start by asking you a simple question. Where are you today on your video data journey? Are you watching video but not storing or tagging or reusing it in any shape or form? Are you step 2, collecting? Intentionally capturing and storing video and data assets? Are you sorting, organizing, tagging, structuring video data? Or step 4, are you visualizing, making video data browsable, skimmable, creating dashboards that you can visualize in some way? Step 5 is extracting data insights and analytics using AI, potentially. And stage 6, the kind of highest stage, is storytelling. So contextualizing with text summarization, turning insights into meaningful narratives and context. So when we talk with many of our customers, we find many are at stages 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe even 5. But today is a real game changer. This plugin that we're about to demo for you gets you all the way to stage 6, really to make the most of the video data that you have access to.
Roland, in storytelling, that's not something that we see in most of today's video management platforms. Can you go into that just a little bit more?
Sure. Well, what you're about to see a demo of is a new tool that we've brought to market, which summarizes what's happening in a video in near real time with a very high degree of accuracy. And not only that, powered by the NVIDIA Cosmos Reason model, it's able to infer all kinds of kind of context and interesting other information that really helps bring to life what might be happening within a video. So it's really not just looking at a kind of static series of images, but it's really helping you as a camera operator or a city or whoever you might work for, and really understand what's happening at a deep level. So yeah, it's providing the context to what the video is telling you.
And it hasn't been a quick journey putting this together. It's been rather complex, and Milestone has been working on this behind the scenes for quite a while. It's not just as simple as plugging in a generative AI chatbot and expecting it to work, right?
Absolutely not. There's a good history. We've been working on this in stealth mode for a couple of years, but delighted to go live with our first product just late last year. Yeah, it's part of a team that's called Hafnia within Milestone, and I'm part of that team, as is Ben. And it consists of a number of different components. So first and foremost, a video data library, currently with over 2 million hours of video data captured from 4,000 cameras from 2 different cities in both Europe and North America. So far, we've curated 150,000 hours of that and made it available for AI model training. And that now underpins our first service that we've launched, this vision language model plugin that you're about to see a demonstration of. So yeah, it's a very kind of exciting project. It has had a long history, but it's really seeing a shift from our kind of core product of software delivery through XProtect.
So 2 million hours of video. Where do you get that video from?
From currently from two cities that we've been working with, Dubuque in Iowa and Genoa in Italy, who've made that data available in a compliant, safe, anonymized way, and fed that into our data library. And we're working with them to manage traffic in their cities.
So I wanted to jump in and ask Ben, you've got some information here on the anonymization tool. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, of course, Keith. So one of the disadvantages with regular anonymization is that you end up destroying parts of the data. For example, blurring a face or, obfuscating a license plate. We employ technology from a partner called Brighter AI that allows us to perform what we call deep natural anonymization. So this essentially can replace a face with a generic face, which can then maintain the gaze of the person. So you can see where someone's looking. And in the same way, we can also replace an existing valid license plate with a generated license plate. This allows us to, for example, track a vehicle between cameras or around a frame. So we both anonymize the data, but for the solution provider, we also maintain the integrity of the data so that they can, increase the performance of their models.
And Brighter AI is more than just a technology partner for Milestone. It's part of the Milestone family.
That's right.
Okay. Alex, I think you have some information here for us on why the traffic use cases were chosen.
Yeah, Keith. Yeah, I just wanted to add that one of the key things when you're fine tuning models, right, or leveraging customers' data, is you want to ensure that it's domain and scenario specific, right? So potentially, if you're working, Roland has mentioned 2 customers, right, but maybe they have very specific use cases, right, that they're targeting. So when you're fine tuning these models, it's key to leverage and use the customer's data set to ensure that you're meeting, their potential outcomes, right? So the main specific fine tuning is critical, right? So that's one of the key things, right? When, Roland mentioned about data curation, cleaning the data to ensure that, hey, when the customer is prompting the video search and summarization agent, they're getting, correct results.
Good. And Roland, I believe you've got some good information for us on a variety of use cases. How are people going to be using these types of tools in their video going forward?
Yeah, absolutely. So these tools are all about powering kind of safer, smarter, sustainable cities, as we said. But we're starting with traffic management use cases, as that's where we already have data that covers 90% of traffic and vehicle use cases with over 99% accuracy. So we're starting there, and the demo you're about to see covers that. So we're building out the data library based on kind of use cases where we see maximum demand, and working out to add that sort of video intelligence layer across the entire kind of city environment.
So imagine millions and millions of petabytes of data that are being used globally. Alex, what are some of the things that you see upcoming for this type of tool to be able to start reviewing this information with a little more automated capability than just manually going through video data, taking up hours and hours of an operator's time?
Yeah, definitely, Keith. So yeah, I mean, one of the things that we're starting to see once, specifically focusing on real-time detection. Imagine cities, right? Once they have these agents practically running, right, detecting. I'll give you a scenario. Let's say that they're detecting potholes, right, in a city, and generally, once a pothole is detected, there's some service ticket that has to be open. So consider this: once that's detected, how do you streamline that entire back end, ticket creation with this technology? That's 100% a possibility that potentially could streamline that entire process for a city. So once the pothole is detected, the alert could be sent. Of course, there is always a human in the loop component, which is critical. Human in the loop confirms, hey, yeah, that is a pothole, right? Once it verifies that the AI agent provided that information, then from there, the ticketing system can automatically trigger that, hey, this pothole has to be repaired. So instead of taking, I don't know, weeks to potentially detect this pothole, now in days, you could proactively detect and potentially repair. And that's just one example, right? But imagine
There are millions of
going
examples.
million
There are all
examples.
sorts of examples.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, Ben, let's take a little bit of a look into some of the technical information that is behind what it takes to make a vision language model work.
Yes, of course, Keith. That's great. So, as Roland mentioned before, and what the left-hand side of this diagram represents is our effort through our salespeople, our solution providers, our partners, to go out to sites, to cities, and to get data, which we will then use to train AI models and also to train the VLM. So, what we have then is we have a lot of raw data. We anonymize this data at the source. So no human eyes are ever seeing any raw aspect of these data at all at any point. We then have an partially automated annotation pipeline, which is supported by our own internal team of annotators. And what they are tasked with doing is describing things that are in these training video sets in as much detail as possible that is relevant for the domain that we're going to apply this VLM in. So for example, traffic. They are describing not only movement of vehicles, interactions over time between pedestrians and vehicles, but also things like markings on the road, signage, visibility, green infrastructure around the road, and basically everything to do with this.
So, for example, if you have somebody that is walking in a crosswalk and a vehicle comes through the crosswalk and hits the person, and you have an annotator who is capturing that information, describing it to the generative AI tool, and it becomes a data point that now the tool can recognize going forward. Correct?
Yes. That's exactly right, Keith. And we would have many, many instances of this type of event, and also potentially several views of the same event around an intersection, for example. And this is really something that strengthens the capability of the VLM when it's in operation. So we annotate this data set, and there's also a significant reduction in the amount of data. So we do something called relevance filtering, where we discard duplicate images, where we throw things out where nothing's happening, and so on. And I think Roland mentioned earlier, we go down to approximately 10% of the original volume of data to the curated data set that we use for fine tuning of the VLM. And the base technology for the vision language model is provided by NVIDIA. It's NVIDIA Cosmos. And this is a model which can interpret video material. It is very good at determining temporal and spatial relationships. It can tell you something about basically any type of video that you would put into it in a generic way. And then what we do is we then take the data that we've sourced from our end customer or the site, and we use this to fine tune the foundational model to a specific purpose. So for example, now we have our US traffic VLM and we have our EU traffic VLM. And Roland mentioned another couple of examples. But the importance here is that we cannot necessarily use the same model both in the US and the EU. And this is because of the differences in vehicle types. There can be differences in, road infrastructure, rules, things that are not necessarily visible, but influence the behavior of things that are happening in the video. So
Even an example of like traffic laws, for example, here in the States, we drive on the right side of the road.
Yeah.
And in the UK, they drive on the left side of the road. So there can be a difference there in country regulations, right?
Yeah, exactly. Also things like jaywalking, are you allowed to cross the road when there's no cars coming? That can be acceptable in one case, but not in another.
One of the other challenges that Genoa has and many cities in Europe have are dealing with GDPR compliance laws. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So GDPR is the general data protection regulation in Europe that we use to basically protect an individual's right to privacy. So I think Roland mentioned earlier that this includes basically storage of data that has personal identifying information, but it also relates to the transfer of data that contains this. So what that means is if I take a picture of you, Keith, beside your car where your number plate's visible, and I transfer that to a server somewhere, I'm then actually in breach of GDPR if I don't have the necessary controls in position. So what we have done is, and I mentioned this before, we anonymize all data. We have complete control of chain of custody from the point where we do the data collection until we basically produce the finished model. When we are in the city, there's a closed network, completely, it's inaccessible from the outside. And then we have the VLM running there locally, so that we never expose any potentially personal identifying information publicly.
And GDPR is an especially tough compliance on the global scale. But compliance laws and privacy laws are coming soon to a government near you, right?
Yeah, absolutely, Keith. A few points to that is that we see some, let's say, some visionary solution providers getting ahead of the curve. So, for example, from the US, they want to produce products that are GDPR compliant because they know that that's the highest standard of data protection in the world. And maybe in a couple of years, some similar laws will come into play in the US, and then they're already 2 years ahead of the market.
Okay, finally, we get into some of the fun stuff. Then, do you want to take us through a demonstration of how XProtect Video Summarization works?
Thanks for the handover, Keith. What I would like to show you now is how we have integrated video summarization for XProtect into XProtect by stepping through a few examples and then demonstrating some use cases. So for everyone that's familiar with XProtect, you will recognize this video wall setup, where here we are showing various clips from the city of Dubuque that are running on a loop. But of course, normally these would be video streams. So this is all business as usual for everyone who's an XProtect user. The new part, it lives up here in this summarization tab. And this is where we expose the functionality of the VLM. So it's a one-step process for basically generating a summarization from a clip. And I'll show you how that works here. So this is an example of an on-demand call to the VLM. First, we select a camera that we would like to query. And here you see all the current cameras that I have listed in my view. I'm going to take this one here. And if I just roll back a little bit, I'll be able to play this clip and I'll show you that this contains a traffic accident. So if I play this clip here, you will see this is a camera that's monitoring an intersection, CCTV camera, slight fisheye. You will see here, there's a collision between these two vehicles. Okay. So this type of incident occurs, unfortunately, quite regularly in the city. And the city has an obligation here to provide a set of reportings to various operators in the municipality, the police, insurance companies, and so on. So the task here that we want to ask the VLM to do is to provide an overall summarization of everything that's related to this accident. So what I've done is I've added the camera here, and now we can see the incident. Now what I want to do is I want to roll on the timeline, and I want to segment part of this clip somewhere between maybe 30 seconds and 5 minutes. I'll take 30 seconds, so I'll roll a little bit before the accident, and then I'll post-roll here afterwards until we have around 30 seconds of footage. The next part is that I will select a prompt from my prompt library, and here you can see we have prompts that are applicable to various types of scenarios. What I want to choose here is my accident reporting prompt. And if you read the prompt here, you will see we have an overall description of what the task is. And then we have various instructions that we ask the machine to step through. We have a condition in the middle which relates to if there is or is not an accident. And in the cases where there is an accident, then we ask for a summarization. And once we have selected the prompt, segmented our video clip, we simply click Generate Summarization. And then you will see up here in the Progress tab what the status of this is now. So first we convert and export and upload the video. Then we run the compute, and that's what we're waiting for now. This is now completed. We can go into our history here. And on the top bar there, we will see this is the summarization that we have just completed. The clip plays back, showing the segmented part that we run the query on. We have the prompt here, and below that, we have the response. So this is a response which tells us what is the overall, set of events that have occurred inside this video. Second, we have a much more detailed description. And thirdly, we have a possible cause of the incident, which in this case is by inadequate yielding. So that's the overall flow. Let me give you another example of how this works. We add the camera. Say in this case, I would like to just have an indication of the visibility and the driving conditions here. I have a prompt that I've made ahead of time, which is called driving conditions reporting. And here we ask the VLM to analyze the surface conditions, the visibility, if there's congestions, signs and markings, and what type of modal distribution is there in the camera, in the frame. So trucks, cars, cyclists, pedestrians, and so on. And then if there are any blockages or disturbances. And then the flow is the same. We segment the part of the clip that we wish to look at. Here I'll choose a clip of, say, 20 seconds. And then again, I click Generate Summarization. Then if I navigate back to the History tab here, we will see we have a new incident here with a very extensive description of what's happening here. And the key point here is Heavy fog means road signs like speed limit 45 are unreadable from a distance because of poor visibility, and then a description of what's going on and describing the driving conditions as fair. Now that we have all of these summaries in our history, we can do plain text searching in here for keywords. So for example, if I look at the keyword sedan, all of the summaries that contain the keyword sedan come up. And when I click on them, the video is played back and all instances of the word sedan are highlighted in my summary. Same here. So this is a way of basically arriving at some information quickly, especially when you have automated responses running. Okay. So another example that I would like to give you is when you have an existing set of analytics that are performing some kind of detection where you may have, for example, false positives being generated. So in this clip, what we are going to observe, and if I roll back a little bit, is that we will see a UPS truck from this point driving into the scene and parking on the right-hand side of the road. And what we should be thinking here is that this side of the road here, this is a no parking zone. However, in the city, there are various exemptions for emergency vehicles, delivery vehicles, emergency responders, and so on. So that means that the detection of any stopped vehicle along here, for example, this UPS truck, is in fact a false positive detection. And if I had my existing set of analytics, I would be detecting this as an illegal parking. But however, there's a rule here that says this is actually allowed. So if I now go into my prompt list and I have my simplified stall assessment prompt, what I'm asking the VLM to do here is to generate a validation of this illegal parking. So if there's an illegal parking, we should be confirming the alert. Otherwise, we should be returning a false positive. And here we can see if the stalled vehicle is a police vehicle, delivery truck, or maintenance vehicle, it's considered a false positive. So let's go ahead and pull out a little segment of the footage there. We'll again take 30 seconds, and that allows us to see the vehicle coming into the scene and stalling. Then we will generate the summarization again, and we will wait a few seconds for this to happen. So the usage scenario here would be that you are raising an alert from your set of analytics, which is just simply saying there's a vehicle inside this bounding box, and you would then pass that alert onto the VLM with the footage segmented or with the timestamps that indicate the beginning and the end of the clip. And we jump into our history here, and what we can see is that we indicate this as being a false positive. And it says the UPS truck that's seen parked then proceeds to move in slow motion, which is unusual but not necessarily illegal. There are no visible obstructions or signs indicating a problem. And that's because the UPS truck is a type of delivery vehicle, which if you remember here, we included that in our prompt.
Thanks, Ben. There are some really capable features available in this tool. I like how seamlessly it fits into the XProtect user interface. Current users of XProtect will be able to pick up this tool and begin using it without much training. Okay, let's shift gears and take a look at some featured use cases. We have some customers that have been instrumental in helping us develop this product for use in real-world applications. Ben, can you tell us more?
Sure, I can. Well, Roland mentioned earlier, we have some key partners, some key city partners that are providing data in exchange for services. And one of these is the city of Dubuque in the Midwest USA in Iowa. We've been working with them now for a couple of years, also in combination with some other solution providers. And if I could summarize what is going on in Dubuque, because it might seem quite unusual for some people that a very small city in the Midwest of USA is engaged in this very high-tech project, very forward-thinking project. And the reason for this is because they have a very rich history of public-private innovation. They received funding for a project which was about kind of AI-driven traffic safety. And they have some visionary people in their city chambers that are very much pushing the agenda of data-driven innovation. So a few of the key use cases that we're working on together with Dubuque is in doing accident reporting. So one of the obligations that they have in the city is that they must provide reports to the police, to insurance companies, to various interested actors within the city sphere that go into detail describing the both before, during, and after an accident, whose fault was the accident, what kind of repercussions were there of the accident, and so on. So what Dubuque have done is that they have started training civilian operators to work together with the police to write these reports. And where we come in now with the vision language model is that we apply the vision language model to iterate over historical clips of accidents and produce these reports. And what this means is it's as though you have the same traffic expert writing every single report instead of a team of 5 people that have different abilities and are trained. They're also consuming resources to be trained and so on. So we create consistency, we provide accuracy, and we can do all of this in a repeatable format where we can basically import this into their reporting system so they can automate a large part of this. And then instead of these civilian operators sitting and writing all of these reports, what they can do then is they can read the report and they can validate that the content is correct, is that it's in the right format and that it's readable. And in the same way, an extension of this case. So when we were scoping this case, one of the traffic engineers in the city had the idea to use this to do analysis of near miss accidents. This is something that's very challenging to recognize with the standard AI model. You have to do a trajectory projection to see where, car A is going to intersect with car B and so on. So, and oftentimes you don't get to the point where you're capable of doing this. Maybe someone gets out of the way in time, the car stops or whatever it can be. But the point of doing this is that so near misses are usually confined to specific areas. And a near miss today is an accident tomorrow. So near misses are because, there's poor marking or poor visibility, or, the traffic lights malfunctioning or something like this. So the idea with this near miss case is that we use the VLM to basically analyze these clips and then to produce a list of areas where we've observed these kind of near miss accidents. And then the traffic engineers and the city management, they can then do an investigation in the site to understand exactly why is this problem happening. And this is something that would take a significant amount of time to do with a regular AI model, and it may not even be possible to do that.
And the video summarization tool helps the citizen operator to be able to quickly track and find that data with much more efficiency, right?
Yes, exactly. So we can produce reports that are extremely detailed, that are also linked to the videos themselves with timestamps and, metadata and so on. So what that means is that they can always go back to review the video after they, perform some search through all of these text materials, for example.
There are a lot of logistical factors that come into play when it comes to traffic. It's not just the accidents, as Ben mentioned. It's also optimizing traffic patterns and designing infrastructure. Alex, I believe you have some information about the Vision Zero initiative.
So in the US, right, the actual use case, we call it Vision Zero. And what I wanted to do is maybe highlight that there was a study done by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration that it actually, in accidents, it cost the US, specifically the US, close to $300 billion plus per year, right? And the reason why Vision Zero, and I'm very passionate about that topic, is that that it actually, I don't know if you guys are aware, but in the US, there's about 40,000 plus, pedestrian fatalities year over year. And that number keeps on growing. And these technologies around Vision Zero are super critical because, one, the actual business impact, of the $300 billion plus that is costing the US is huge. So when you're, when you're providing these type of technologies, don't only think about it just on video analytics. And it's actually, hey, how did you do city decisions about street design, signaling? Like, I'll give you a scenario. I was in a working session with a city, and in the room you had the Vision Zero team, you had the signaling team, you had the Department of Transportation. And one of the key things that they were saying is, hey, when they're doing these traffic studies, right, it actually takes a very long time to determine, hey, what optimization we have to do in our signaling system. So the technology that Ben was showing and Roland was showing on the demo can actually streamline that entire, studies, right, that are being done today in cities.
Let's look at Vaidio City.
Sure. So a little bit earlier, Roland mentioned that we have some partners that are basically integrating the VLM into their own service offerings. And Vaidio is an example of that through their platform, Vaidio City. So the first and most basic integration is they simply want to pass on the VLM functionality to their customers. So they want their customers to be able to basically summarize videos. The second case for them is for improving some of the functionality that they themselves have on their platform. So one of the things they allow on their platform is search and summaries through metadata querying. So they'll have a piece of metadata which says red car, person in a white hat, or something like this. This is done manually, or it's done with existing, neural network type of AIs. So it's quite a sparse level of information that you're able to search through. And it doesn't include anything related to behavior or temporal development. So what they want to do now is to use the VLM to generate these metadata summarizations. So we can, for example, include behavioral aspects. We can include interactions between pedestrians and vehicles. We can include things that, develop over time, like rain or sleet or fog or whatever it will be. So they also are using this to improve, let's say, the capability of their own AIs. And they are also doing a few things where they have recognized themselves that their current models are underperforming. So one of these is, for example, fire detection. So they have a fire detection model, which it's okay. And what it does is it tells you where on the screen is there a fire. The VLM can tell you where's the fire, what caused the fire, how severe is the fire, is there a risk to, property in the area, is there anything flammable around the fire, and so on. So this is a much richer degree of information than you would typically get from a regular AI system. And Vaidio are working together with us in Dubuque, and they're using the city of Dubuque as a testing ground for many of these new services that they're building on top of the VLM technology.
So this technology is especially helpful for smart cities, and that's an immediate need right now, correct?
Exactly, Keith. And if we're thinking about traffic scenarios, from a single image or a single video, you can get a great deal of information about, the state of the road, the markings, the state of the signage, the weather, all of these things. So the application of the VLM, even though we position it as a traffic VLM, it's, as you say, it's much broader relation to smart city technology.
What we briefly mentioned earlier, the NVIDIA technology that is a foundational underpinning for Milestone VLM and XProtect. Alex, tell us a little bit about what's going on in NVIDIA and what technology you're using to help make some of these things possible.
So actually, to recap, I think what we've been hearing today, right? I mean, most organizations today are sitting in thousands of camera streams and years of stored video, right? In most cases. I think the problem is not, accessing footage, right? At the end of the day, is actually extracting meaningful and actionable intelligence in real time, which I think it's kind of the core of what all of us have been saying in the room today. So this solution, right, embeds a video analytics AI agent within the Milestone XProtect workflow. So instead of just relying on traditional, rule-based alerts, right, like we've been accustomed to in the physical security space, this system actually uses generative AI and vision language models to automatically summarize live and recorded video. So the idea is that you contextualize events, validate whether these alerts are real incidents or false positives potentially. So it understands what's happening in a scene. So me as a user, right, putting myself as a user, right, if I'm prompting the Milestone XProtect plugin, hey, was there an incident here? I want to ensure that hey, there's accuracy, right? And when that outcome or that response comes back, it's just not detecting maybe emotion. It's actually, hey, it's understanding a behavior, a pattern, an anomaly, which is critical, right? Because then I can make quicker decisions, more proactive decisions. So to answer your question, right, what's under the hood? So this is powered by NVIDIA Metropolis, which also leverages our advanced vision language models. So the video streams are analyzed in real time. Clips and embeddings are generated in process and basically it's identifying trends, recurring scenarios, performance gaps. A lot of the points that Roland and Ben have highlighted. So in this case, what we're leveraging and the way that we've been collaborating with Milestone is leveraging our Cosmos Reason and Cosmos Curator frameworks or foundational models. So basically, these models or these frameworks, they help structure and refine the data set. And the key thing is that it's a continuous cycle to ensure that the model is improving, right? So it's not just one time fine tuning, it's actually understanding your environment to ensure that your accuracy goes up, right? So the result is that a system that just doesn't detect events, it actually learns from them. So you're proactively learning, engaging with your video, you're talking to your video at the end of the day, and then you're getting results. So I'd like to highlight, at the end of the day, for the end customers that are on the line and the partners that are on the line, right? The business impact is that for operators and decision makers, this translates into tangible outcomes, right? What does that mean? Increase productivity by reducing manual video search. So in the old days, right, you had to actually sit there, maybe in a DDR, and spend multiple hours to analyze video. Today, you can actually use these AI agents to prompt the engine and understand what's happening. Also, reduce alert fatigue through AI validation, which is critical. Because if you're spending hours in front of these camera streams, like I think Roland mentioned earlier, the ROI, maybe we don't have an actual value right now, but the ROI directly to the human, right? The person that's sitting in front of these cameras, they can actually be doing some other work, right? And they can reduce the fatigue of looking at the cameras. So it's more of a proactive engagement.
Having an operator that's monitoring camera streams is awesome, but the offset there is that their productivity and their attention level decreases significantly over time, especially when they're looking at a vast amount of data, right?
That is correct. Yeah. So, and then the other key thing, especially for cities, for, traffic operators, right? It's improved asset management, operationalized visibility. And at the end, like I mentioned, I think I've repeated this word a few times, is proactive detection of accidents and production issues, right? Within your environment. So, just to iterate, right? This is just not about video analytics, right? It's kind of that shift. We're seeing this shift right now, and this is the moment, right? And this is game changing. We've mentioned that, I think, a few times throughout the webinar. This is game changing because it's not just immediate access to these agents, but also the access that the partners, the community, the ecosystem now has access to VLM as a service, video summarization, how they can leverage, this framework to actually optimize their models as well, right? So by combining the Milestone VMS leadership and NVIDIA's generative AI capabilities, today organizations can turn everyday camera. I think you mentioned it, Keith. Hey, if you just have a traditional camera, so you basically can turn everyday camera into a clear, measurable operational advantage, right? Now you can actually get real insights across all your camera deployments. So what I'm showing here basically is a physical AI flywheel, right? And this is where it comes to life. So every summarized clip, a validated alert, a reviewed event becomes part of that continuous improvement loop. So you as a user, of course, I always like to iterate, right? Human in the loop is critical. But once those alerts come in proactively, then you could take decisions. So the decision making is a lot quicker. So, the most relevant video is organized, is refined so the system learns from real world conditions and not just generic data sets. And I think that's also something that we've mentioned throughout the webcast. We mentioned examples like Dubuque, Vaidio City, and Genoa, right? And the critical thing is, I think what we've highlighted is we're not using generic data sets, which is critical. We're using very domain specific scenarios within each of these deployments. And by the way, this is transparent for the user, right? The user uses the engine, they fine tune their conditions, and then they start prompting the agent to get these outcomes or these results back as quick as possible and as more accurate as possible. So basically, as the model adapts to specific environments, like I think we've mentioned some key segments, traffic systems, ports, campuses, critical infrastructure, the accuracy is going to improve over time. And what's going to happen? False alarms are going to decrease and insights become more reliable.
We've packed so much information into this webcast. I'm sure that our attendees have a lot of questions. We want to make sure that if you're attending today, that you have an opportunity to ask those questions. Please plug those in to the dashboard there. We have a team of folks that are standing by to help answer your question, and we'll bring some of those up live at the end of our time here together. But I wanted to hand this over to Roland so that we can talk a little bit about the Hafnia community and maybe find out where we can catch up with some of the Hafnia team members in coming days.
Yeah, thanks, Keith. So yeah, like we say, we think this new plugin is a game changer for contextualizing your video data. And we know we can't do this on our own. So we'd really love to hear from you, your questions, either today or after today. And we'd also like to invite you to join our community and get involved and build new products, build new services, build new businesses. So the three ways in which you can do that. One is check out the QR code here and find out more specifically about the text summarization plugin and try it out. We'd love it if you did. Secondly, the next slide, if you want to find out a little bit more about kind of Project Hafnia specifically, and try the VLM as a service, which is then have a look at this QR code and the details here. And then last but not least, on the final slide, we're going to be at a whole series of events over the course of this year. And coming up just in the next few weeks, we'll be at NVIDIA GTC in San Jose. We're looking forward to that. And the week later at ISC West in Las Vegas. So if you're planning to be at any of these events, we'd love to see you there and come and get in touch to find out more.
So now it's time to take on some questions, and that will wrap up our panel portion of the webinar. Now it's time for the speed round, the lightning round, so to speak. We've got questions that have been rolling in, dozens of questions from people. We want to make sure that we can answer those questions, but we have way more than we can handle. We have way more than we can answer live. So we've been trying to answer some of those questions that have been coming in with our team of folks behind the scenes that are helping to answer questions. We want to ask you to please participate in the survey when this webcast is over. We'd like to connect with you if you have additional questions or want to talk about specific projects. The best way to get connected with the team is by responding to that survey and leaving your contact info in the survey. So lots of questions. Hope you guys are ready to answer some of these questions. I'm going to shoot these out really quick. Let's keep our responses brief because we only have about 10 minutes and we've got a lot of questions to get through. I wanted to start with a question for Ben. What is the pricing and licensing model for this VLM tool?
Sure. The pricing and the license, there's no license, so it's per query costing. It's a free download. It costs 15 US cents per query, regardless of the length of the video or the complexity of the prompt.
All right. And how do people get access to this? I know we provided some QR codes earlier there. How do people get access to this?
Yeah, so they have to join our platform and register as a user. and then they will be able to download the plugin file and set up their users and monitor their usages and so on.
That's the QR code that you need to gain access to. So if you want to join the community or gain access to the tool, that's where you can do that. All right, very good. Alex, this one's for you. Question comes in from one of our attendees. Are you saying that this system only summarizes video after a given clip is selected?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. However, there are some things that we did not cover, Ben, right? Within the webhooks for the tool. Unfortunately, we had to cut some of that for time, but there's some capabilities beyond just the summarization of the video after the clip is selected, correct?
Yeah. So very briefly, you can schedule the VLM call. So you can set that sort of frequency and a time range. So for example, you can run every couple of minutes during rush hour. You can also drive the VLM from other analytics. So you make a detection on your intruder detection system, and then you can call the VLM to validate or to contextualize who that intruder is.
All right. Let's see. Roland, I've got one for you. A question that says, my inquiries pertain to the impact of artificial intelligence on airport security operations. Our primary focus is on addressing security concerns such as detection of unattended items, unauthorized access. The tool that we have today is only available for traffic. That doesn't mean that's where we're stopping, right, Roland?
Yeah, absolutely not. So you're quite right. At the moment, we're focused on traffic management use cases, but next on our roadmap is ports and airports coming soon. And then we're also a little bit down the line working on people, public spaces, public transit as the kind of next 3 kind of application areas.
Very good. Can we trust the output of the VLM? How do you prevent hallucinations? Ben, would you handle that one for us?
Sure. I did answer this earlier in text, but I think I replied to the person themselves. So hallucinations are very rare. The process of fine-tuning and also the quality of the base model that NVIDIA had provided limit the number of hallucinations to almost 0. I've never seen a full-on hallucination in the time that I've been using this.
Alex,
welcome to that.
Yep, I actually also had put it in the question and answers, but basically by grounding the AI, I think some of the examples that Ben had mentioned during the demo, by leveraging the real data in the environment, I think is critical, and not just relying on the natural language feedback, right, that the system is providing. So once you pull those embeddings from the real footage and data that the customer has, then actually that helps reduce the hallucinations.
Okay. This one's for Alex or Ben. Let's see who wants to get to it first. How do you prevent off-topic questions? Alex, maybe you want to pick that up?
Or Ben, you want to?
Yeah.
I'm not sure what that means in the context of this webinar, or general. How do we prevent the VLM providing
the question? Yeah, the question is specifically regarding the VLM, and that's a great thing to bring up, because off-topic questions for the webinar are much different than off-topic questions would be for the VLM. So let's focus on the VLM, because those may come in, right?
Yeah, they come in. So as I said before, and Roland also mentioned, the VLM is fine-tuned on top of the NVIDIA model. So if you ask it a question about anything, it will give you a traffic-centric answer. And we've done some quite extensive testing to try and produce, let's say, invalid outputs. And it will fall back to basically presenting a kind of general set of traffic observations. So it's not able to produce these kind of garbage outputs that you sometimes see from LMMs and so on.
You're not going to be able to ask it what its favorite flavor of ice cream is, for that matter.
No. Then it would tell you there are 2 vehicles parked outside, the building or whatever.
Very good. Let's see. I've got a question here that says, what is the compute requirement for video summarization? Ben, would you handle that one?
Yep. So the way that we currently have, so we're providing the service as a cloud service right now. So that means there are no local compute requirements beyond what you need to run XProtect. And when we are moving on to on-prem, which is something that we are testing now, that will depend on your usage.
Very good. We had a question that came in that says, can the anonymized data be de-anonymized for law enforcement and prosecution? I think that's a process question because anonymizing data happens before your data is gathered locally, correct, Ben?
Yeah. I just want to put a few words on that one, Keith. Yeah. And also being able to, let's say, undo the anonymization and go back to the original information in the video would really negate the point of the anonymization. So the answer is no, you can never do that.
So your video is anonymized before it ever gets to your security system and your security deployment. And of course, it's not anonymized once it's within your system. Do you want to anonymize your video when it's inside of your system? You have that option. You have tools, whether it's from Brighter AI or other tool sets that are available for anonymizing your video. We have lots of options available within XProtect. Okay, when you query a single video, is this for the VLM to give you a report on what's happening in the video? The follow-up to that, alternative, we can't search for certain activity via the text search with this plugin. Is that correct?
No, that is not correct. So what you can do is when you run, for example, scheduled calls to the VLM, you can put the response in the bookmark description for that clip that you've uploaded. And then you can do plain text search through all of these responses. So you have a very rich contextual search available. Yeah.
Very good. How difficult is it to reconfigure Milestone to use the plugin? Is it simple? Is it plug and play? What's the requirement for hardware upgrades? Ben, that one's probably also for you.
Yeah. So on the side of installing the plugin and so on, you have a very, very minimal configuration, which is done through what we call our gateway application. So this is where you can add users and so on. And that's it. The installation process takes about 20 minutes, and then you're up and running. There are no compute storage requirements or anything like that. The plugin operates entirely in the cloud.
So there were a couple of tools that we did not cover during our demo, primarily because of time. We simply didn't have enough time to get everything done, which I'm sure there will be some good follow-ups for this going forward. The gateway application is one. The prompt library is another, Ben, correct?
Yeah, exactly, Keith. So when we supply the plugin, we also supply a library of prompts. And also through the gateway application, you can manage prompts, add them, delete them, edit, and so on. And they will basically appear directly in the Smart Client interface.
We are at the very end of our time here. And we need to wrap up on time to respect everybody's wishes. But Roland, we have some upcoming events here. I know we mentioned some of them on our screen here, but ISC West is a really big one for us. Tell me a little bit about that.
That's right. Well, in the next 2 weeks, before ISC West, there's going to be a group of us, including Alex and some of my colleagues at G2C in San Jose, and then NVIDIA GTC, and then a week later, as you say, ISC West is a huge event for Milestone in North America. The week after that, there's an event in Copenhagen, which is where our global headquarters are, all around urban mobility, called Copenhagen Days. I'll be representing there, and the slide that you showed earlier has a range of events. There's many, many more, of course. So keep an eye on our website or get in touch if you want to connect with us there. We'd love to see you.
Thanks, everybody, for joining us today, especially thanks to our panelists for making yourself available and doing such a fantastic job covering this. Really, really great stuff. I really appreciate you being with us. I appreciate all of our attendees sticking with us. Look for the follow-up on the article that's coming out and the on-demand video. We'll have that available for you. Also, I'd like to ask you one last time to please fill out the survey at the end of this. If you want us to reach out to you directly, make sure you leave your contact info. But thanks again for everybody for being here. Have a good day.